I tried to tell your father we needed to pay those drug deals to leave us alone. I got to know that you understand that I tried to tell him not to talk to the police, that those kids were bad news.
Now, in today's breakdown, we are going to be going through some new confirmed cast members for Power Origins Season 1, which actually fits quite well with my recent breakdown of Power Origins, especially with one character in particular. For those who haven't seen my latest Origins breakdown, I went through some BTS images, a couple of clues and Easter eggs that were given by 50 Cent, but we also went through the dynamic of Ghost and Kanan's relationship, how and why Kanan became so important to Ghost. We also asked a question around Ghost's past in terms of his family and his backstory. I questioned this was a character who we saw for 6 seasons of Power, 63 episodes in total, but where we still find ourselves asking the question whether we even knew who James St. Patrick was, with one of the big questions revolving around his family. Well, one of the new characters that they will be introducing is Ghost's grandmother, Grandma Charlene. There are also 4 more characters, with Theresa Belli being another character who will be returning from the world of Raising Kanan. The Deadline article did also give us an update on Power Legacy, so we will be running through some updates around where we are with that as well. With that being said, let's get into the new characters and some early thoughts for all things Power Origins Season 1. Now, just as a very quick brief reminder, because we did go through this just recently, so far in the world of Power Origins, we have the following cast confirmed: Kay Egan, Jay Boogs, Lenny Sidell, Jill Wexler, and the returning Traymon Stinson. However, there will also be another returning character that we are all familiar with from Raising Kanan, and she is Theresa Belli.
He just lets these fucking animals who killed my family run amok without any repercussions at all.
Now, Deadline posted this article a few days ago confirming Nadia Dajani, who plays Theresa Belli in Raising Kanan, will also be returning to Power Origins. They described her character as the widow of Sal Belli, known to be tough and unsentimental. She had a tumultuous past with Kanan's mother, Raquel Thomas, and is back to shake up Kanan's operations. So just like Traymon, we've got Theresa Belli returning in the world of Raising Kanan, and we know she's a character who's been through definitely a lot. She was introduced as a wife of Sal Belli, the leader of the Italians organization over in New Jersey, someone who had problems with Rock and the Thomases back in Season 2, which was when Rock began to expand her operations across the pond. For those who may have forgotten, because it has been a while since Season 2, and no doubt a Raising Kanan update is actually long overdue, but Marvin was also involved in the death of Marco Belli, Sal and Teresa's son. He sent him on a mission to kill Tony Deep, which went wrong, and that ended in the death of Marco. We then saw them at the christening of his son, when Marvin put another dagger through the hearts of the Belli family, this time killing Sal on the orders of Stefano Marchetti. But as we learned in episode 10 in Season 4, Phil Russo was also behind the removal of Sal, because he wanted his position in New Jersey. So we actually learned towards the end of Season 4 episode 10, Stefano Marchetti and Phil Russo actually conspired together to get rid of Teresa's husband. We then saw her briefly in Season 4 when Unique went to pay Teresa a visit, who was still grieving the loss of her family. And this is someone who's lost her entire world at no fault of her own. She was still reeling from the loss of her husband and her son, basically at the hands of the Thomases. That's who she blames, along with Phil Russo. At this moment in time, she doesn't know that Phil Russo and Stefano Marchetti were behind the orders to kill Sal, although she was beginning to get very tired of the fact Phil Russo wasn't doing anything about it. But there has been a common theme in the world of Raising Kanan: blame Rock. Whether she's the cause of issues or not, it always seems to be as if everybody always wants to blame Rock. We know she's far from innocent, definitely far from innocent, but as of late, especially in Season 4, she's definitely not the one to blame for a lot of the things that's been going on in the world of Raising Kanan. But I guess it's the story of the boy who cried wolf, and definitely her past catching up. Now, we don't know what role she'll play, if any, in Raising Kanan Season 5. Judging by her last conversation with Unique in episode 10, she's sick and tired of Phil Russo not doing anything about Sal Belli's death. So it does look like she potentially may have something to say and do in Season 5, but it does look as if these wounds have cut deep and these scars still haven't healed in terms of her past with Rock and the Thomases by the time we get to Power Origins. A past in history that seems to have followed Kanan into Power Origins in the early 2000s. She's going to be back to cause chaos for Kanan and his operations in Season 1, and I'm actually expecting to see more of a stern, a colder Teresa rather than the fragile, heartbroken character that we now see in Raising Kanan. Death can often change people, and we've seen how death can change characters in the world of Power. And with what she's been through, with the family that she's lost, her husband and her son, with the family that she has in terms of the Italian crime family, the Italian connection, she is someone who does seem like she could be a problem and a threat in the future. Someone who probably wants to cause chaos and problems for the family that caused her problems in raising Kanan, and Kanan does seem to be the one in her sights. Now they have mentioned her history with Rock, so that's the history, but whether there's anything more in Season 5, whether they butt heads and clash in Raising Kanan Season 5, and whether there's a story or a plot that keeps her around wanting revenge, I'm sure there will be. They did give us a hint towards the end of Season 4 in Episode 10 in conversation with Unique, and I'm sure she definitely will feature in Season 5 as well. So just like the returning Tremont Stinson, we can now add Theresa Belli to the list of characters who will be crossing over into Power Origins from the world of Raising Kanan. But moving over to a couple of new detectives and law enforcement. Now Deadline have given us the information of 3 new detectives. I'm sure there will be more, but these are the main players in and around law enforcement. Makiri will be playing Officer Melanie Rivers, and she's described as a strategic and take charge kind of woman who can be quite secretive, but isn't who she seems to be. We then have Harper, who will be playing Detective Burns, and his character description reads: a speculative, curious, and relentlessly persistent cop who has a need to dig and insert himself in investigations that aren't his own. Last but not least, we have Gupton, who will be playing Detective Glover Archibald, who has seen and heard it all, a man who doesn't like to be challenged and believes in solving cases the old-fashioned way. So that's law enforcement, and we all know in Power, where there's the street game, drugs, money and power, there will always be some sort of cops involved causing Tommy, Ghost and Kanan trouble. Although going into Power Origins, we do actually know how Ghost was very good at evading these cops.
We sell crack 100 miles an hour up the street. So the cops started to know our faces. Every time they seen us, they used to hop out, run down on us. Ghost be gone for a week, even think to run this shit.
So when it actually comes to dealing with these cops in Power Origins, from Ghost's perspective with the squeaky clean record that he had at the beginning of Power, I think we can all expect Ghost to be quicker and smarter than anybody when it comes to dealing with these new detectives and cops in the streets. He's going to be very quick on his feet, he will be able to stick and move, but at the same time very quick with his mind when it comes to being able to outthink them as well. This is a kid who I'm expecting to be very intelligent, handling his business on all fronts. We no doubt will see him making mistakes, no doubt. That's the part and parcel of this game and how he would have learned. I think we all know our biggest growth and development comes when we actually fail, when we make mistakes. It is human nature for us to learn when we hit rock bottom and when we make these mistakes so we can grow. But if you do make these mistakes over and over again, 2, 3, 4 times, for example, going back to your ex, then I would probably be honest, that's definitely on you, just like it was for Ghost in Power, should have left Angela alone. But at the same time in Power Origins, he was said to be a very smart kid, and I do expect to see that when it comes to evading these cops. I don't think the same can actually be said about Tommy with his long rap sheet, and we also know about the history with Kanan with law enforcement as well. Now, in terms of the detectives and cops themselves, Officer Melanie Rivers does stick out to me because of her character description. They mention that she isn't who she seems to be. At this moment in time, I do think it's probably a bit too early to be speculating and throwing out predictions without knowing anything more or seeing these guys in action in Season 1, but definitely just something to keep in mind heading into the first season. Something does seem to be fishy about Melanie Rivers. Detective Burns also sounds very much like Detective Burke, by the way, sticking his nose into investigations that aren't his own, and we all know how that ends up when you start uncovering information that you shouldn't know in the world of Power. The number of times people told Detective Burke to leave this alone in Raising Kanan, where she just wouldn't listen. Detective Burns sounds very similar. With Detective Glover, my early thoughts are he's a character who will take a no-nonsense approach, a very tough old-school detective who probably doesn't go by the book. He'll be stuck in his old ways of doing things, and he probably will be able to get results, but will also cause problems in his office and in the streets. I do think he's a detective who will definitely be a problem, that's for sure. But that's law enforcement. Let's move over to the final character, which is Ghost's grandmother. Now, over here we have Pinkins, who will be playing Grandma Charlene, Ghost's loving grandmother, who is described as a warm but unsteady presence who has neurological issues, and it does leave her slipping in and out of focus. So we are going to be introduced to some family which we've always questioned, including you guys. We've always questioned Ghost's past, his backstory, his family, his mother, and the mystery around Curtis St. Patrick's death, which I'm not sure whether we will see and introduce to Curtis St. Patrick. In my last Origins breakdown, I mentioned how we probably won't even see Angela Valdez, at least not in the present timeline in Origins. We may see these stories be played out in flashbacks and in conversations, but because these are the stories we've already heard in Power, I don't think necessarily we need to see all of them being played out on screen. Some of them where we've got questions and mystery around, for example, Breeze's death, Curtis St. Patrick, I do think we do need to know more information for sure. But I did mention let's get to the stuff that we don't know in terms of Ghost's backstory and past. And by the casting news, them casting Ghost's grandmother and no word of Curtis St. Patrick, who probably is dead in the story by the time we get into the opening episode, that's what it looks like they're kind of going for. Which doesn't mean that they're skipping over the important details of Ghost's past. I do think they will be diving very deep into the history and backstory of Ghost because they've got 18 episodes for season 1. Through the mixture of flashbacks and conversations, I do think they will explore and give us the history of what happened. And the same also goes for Grandma Charlene. But those who have been lucky enough to live and have a relationship with their grandparents, a lot of you guys will know how these guys have a lot of stories to tell, very similar to Grandma Joyce Thomas when she was telling a young Kanan about his grandfather. Grandparents love telling stories and revisiting the past. Just like when I used to go visit my nan, she always had stories. And I do think that's another way in which we learn more about Ghost's past and history through conversations and through Grandma Charlene. So definitely expecting to learn more about Ghost's family, backstory and history through the mixture of his grandma, conversations and also flashbacks. She also seems like a character who's going to be very loving when it comes to Ghost. Someone who's probably lost a lot in her life as well in terms of family. I do think we'll see a very loving relationship between them, with Ghost also helping taking care of her, because that's just the kind of character Ghost was in Power. We all remember when he died, he did look after everyone, apart from Tasha. You had Paz Valdez, Kay Egan, he sorted out Tommy's Mustang, and he also left shares, watches, and the nightclubs for Tariq, but only if he graduated with an average GPA of 3.5.
Jamie left me some money, so I don't need you no more.
He didn't leave it to Angela. He left it to you.
So Ghost was a character who looked after his people, and I'm definitely expecting the same with his grandmother. However, with her condition, she's probably someone who may not last the distance. She looks like she's already suffering in and out of focus. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if there does come a moment where she's talking to Ghost and she does reveal something, but she doesn't realize she said it. We know in Power there can be a lot of secrets, especially when it comes to family and loved ones. And maybe Grandma Charlene is someone who's just holding on to a few that will reveal a lot more about Ghost's backstory. So those are a couple of thoughts around Grandma Charlene, nothing too crazy in terms of predictions. I do think with what we've been through and the questions we're asking, they're definitely all valid in terms of Ghost's backstory and questions and thoughts. I'm definitely expecting to be touched on at some point during conversations between Ghost and his grandma. But with that being said, let's talk about the update with Power Legacy. Now, in terms of Power Legacy, which would follow on from the events of For Season 3, the article from Deadline did mention that things are looking good, but nothing official has been ordered as of yet. The final episode of Force really does a great job of setting up Legacy, with Tommy and Tariq ending the crime drama on the roof, discussing a future together as business partners, potentially back in New York. But we know that's not all. They've left a lot of loose threads open, such as Maria being in Mexico, pregnant with Tommy's kid. There's Jannard and Vic still in the wind. There are other characters still alive in Chicago. So they definitely will be thinking about what to do next. Maybe they were waiting to see how the fans kind of take to the season as a whole before going forward. Which characters do they warm to the most? Who are the fan favorites that come out the final season? Maybe they were just kind of waiting for the reactions, meaning you guys in the comment section, us as the audience. So I do expect an official announcement to come at some point in the near future, so definitely keep your eyes peeled for news on Power Legacy, which is still only the working title. The Deadline article didn't mention it's confirmed. They may go ahead and decide to call it something else, but with Tariq teasing, let's build our legacy, I do think it just makes sense for it to be called Power Legacy. But that's a wrap with the latest news that was released from Deadline. We've got a bunch of new players introduced in the world of Origins, from the returning Theresa Belli, a bunch of new detectives that will be a problem, and also Ghost's grandmother, Grandmother Charlene, who I'm really hoping does open the world of Ghost's past and history a bit more. It's also looking good on the legacy front, so hopefully we do get some information on that front pretty soon as well. But with that being said, drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section on the new players in the world of Origins. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.